Welcome back to Inside City Hall. That was a look at video from yesterday at 26 Federal Plaza, a focal point for protesters rallying against the Trump administration's immigration enforcement here in the city. More than a dozen elected officials were arrested. Among them, my next guest, State Senator Julia Salazar. She represents parts of Brooklyn, including Bushwick, parts of Greenpoint and Williamsburg, as well as Ridgewood, Queens, and she joins me now. Welcome back to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's talk about what happened yesterday. Walk us through this a little bit. You were part of a group of about a dozen state lawmakers who came down to Federal Plaza. I guess first, what was the objective in coming down there yesterday?
We know that as elected officials, we have a responsibility to stand up for all of our constituents, regardless of their immigration status. And for far too long, ICE has been, in some cases, unlawfully capturing our constituents, our immigrant neighbors, directly from the courthouses in Federal Plaza, and then holding them unlawfully, it's been determined now, in immigration detention on the 10th floor of 26 Federal Plaza. We went there, myself and other elected officials who went inside to demand that we observe the conditions on the 10th floor to ensure that people are no longer being held in inhumane conditions. The ICE agents there, DHS, they refused to allow us inside. And we said, look, we have to do everything in our power to be able to stand up to this and reject it. And that not only includes fighting for legislative changes, for policy changes, but also going there ourselves and doing everything in our power, even if it involves civil disobedience.
Now, you said that they're being held unlawfully. Is that because of the conditions inside of that 10th floor detaining? They object to the idea that it's described as a detainment facility, but it's at least a holding facility. And a federal judge has ruled that they need to change the way that they treat some of those being held there, in part because of this video that leaked out that showed the overcrowded conditions inside. So is that the reason you guys want to be there and to be able to observe what's going on inside?
That's exactly right. We want to hold them accountable for what we have learned from leaked video footage, photos, and the numerous accounts of people who have since been released, but were being held for, at minimum, days, some for over a week. And as a judge, as you mentioned, as the judge ruled a couple days ago, a federal judge said that this is not a detention facility, but they are unlawfully treating it as such. And no elected officials have been permitted, including members of Congress. My Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez has previously gone to Federal Plaza to the 10th floor and requested to see the conditions there, and they wouldn't allow her to either. And so we have to continue. I think it's our responsibility as elected officials to continue to demand to see those conditions. When we arrived, it was very clear from ICE agents, DHS, that they were nervous and that they would do anything they could to hide what was behind that door. They even sealed it shut. They zip tied the door shut. They taped it. And that, which of course is also a hazardous thing to do, but it just demonstrated that they have something to hide.
And so you guys were in the hallway outside the doors, and this was not the kind of choreographed civil disobedience where the officers knew you guys were intending to be arrested, right? That's not how this unfolded.
Yeah, that's right. We took them by surprise, and we really did want to observe the conditions, even though we were confident that they wouldn't allow us to. The best possible scenario would have been for them to allow us in to observe the conditions and make sure that none of our neighbors are being kept in inhumane conditions there, and that they're not being kept there overnight at all, because that has been determined to be illegal. But instead, of course, they didn't allow us in, and so federal police, FPS, came in and arrested us.
So obviously you were quickly released, but what will be the resolution of the case of your case and those of the other elected officials. I mean, is this the equivalent of like receiving a misdemeanor summons?
It is very similar, right? So several of us, perhaps all of us, were given court dates in November, so we will return, we'll go to 500 Pearl Street and have our cases adjudicated. But I'm not terribly concerned about it. I believe we did the right thing and we knew what the potential consequences would be.
What can you do as a state lawmaker? Because obviously this is, federal immigration enforcement. ICE is a federal agency. Is there anything that you think can or should be done on the state level when it comes to immigration enforcement?
Absolutely. We should have, this past legislative session, passed a bill called New York for All. Right now in New York City, local law, an executive order actually, prohibits local law enforcement, the NYPD, from collaborating with ICE, from sharing immigration data, information from New Yorkers with the federal government. And we want that to be the case outside of New York City as well. We also know that in New York City, this is sometimes violated, and so there is local legislation called the New York Trust Act that would provide recourse to people, a private right of action, if their rights are violated in this way, if the local law is violated. But at the state level, we need to pass New York for All to ensure that state and local law enforcement are not collaborating with ICE to kidnap and detain our neighbors and separating families the way they are right now.
Our last couple of minutes, let me ask you about politics. You are actually the first member of the Democratic Socialists of America to be elected to the state legislature. And you, of course, support Zohran Mamdani, a fellow lawmaker, fellow DSA member. Have you been surprised at his success in this campaign? I mean, I don't know that anyone, including DSA members, expected him to win this kind of broad support in a citywide race.
Yeah, it has been very pleasantly surprising to see him win so decisively in the primary. I'm very confident that he will be our next mayor. And that is what happens when you do something really ambitious and you set ambitious goals for a movement like this, that you continue to surprise yourself and we surprise each other. But it is a wonderful surprise to see someone who deeply cares about the needs of working people and has a vision for making New York City work for all of us, for people across the entire city.
I wonder, for people like you, when you see Mamdani, I think in the general election, he's had to do a little bit of moderating his positions and even distancing himself a little bit from the DSA platform, whether it's defunding the police or eliminating misdemeanors, that sort of thing. Is that disappointing to see from your perspective, or is that just, what you have to do to win in a general election with a broader electorate?
I don't feel disappointed. As a state senator, of course, I represent a district of a little over 300,000 people, and that's very different than running for mayor and seeking to represent a really eclectic range of viewpoints of New Yorkers. And I know that what Assemblyman Mamdani is seeking to do is represent a much bigger population of people and speak to them where they are. And I think that he will continue to do that. So I support him doing that, even as him seeking to be accountable to that constituency can look different than the work that I do as a Democratic Socialist senator.
All right, State Senator Julia Salazar, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bobby.